America and to the
the
republic
republic for
which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yes.
Please remain standing for a moment of silence or a silent prayer as your conscience finds appropriate. Thank you. Please be seated. Members of the council, you have before you an agenda. Are any changes needed to the agenda? I'm looking for my copy of the agenda. Okay, hearing nothing, may I please have a motion to approve the agenda as submitted?
So moved. Seconded.
Motion by Councilmember Smith, seconded by Councilmember Fo. Is there any discussion? Are there any public comments on the motion to approve the agenda as submitted? Hearing none, I will do a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Fo.
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua.
Aye.
Council members, Sadiq does not appear to be in attendance. Councilmember Mejia.
Aye.
Thank you. Councilmember Mayers does not appear to be in attendance this evening. I sent her a message, hope she will attend. I haven't heard from Councilmember Sadiq. Okay, next item on the agenda. Got to ask for stated conflicts of interest. Are there any conflicts of interest on this agenda? It doesn't need to be part of that exact motion. Are there conflicts of interest? Hearing none, I'll assume that's a no. Okay, the next item on the agenda is a proclamation in honor of Arbor Day. And let me find it in the stack of windows here. Here we go. Proclamation in honor of Arbor Day 2022. Whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees. And whereas this holiday, called Arbor Day, was first observed for the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska. And whereas Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world. And whereas trees can reduce the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, cut heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce life-giving oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife. And whereas trees in our town increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, and beautify our community. And whereas the mayor and council commit to operations, programs, initiatives, legislation, and resources that support the town's tree canopy, therefore be it resolved that the town of Riverdale Park mayor and council do hereby proclaim April 29th, 2022 as Arbor Day in the town of Riverdale Park, and call upon everyone in our community to observe this day with appropriate programs, activities, and ceremonies. Y ahora en español, proclamación, una proclamación en honor al Día del Árbol 2022, considerando que en, I'm not used to that one, 1872, J. Sterling Morton propuso a la Junta de Agricultura de Nebraska que se reservara un día especial para la plantación de árboles, y considerando que esta festividad, llamada Día de Árbol, se observó por primera vez con la plantación de más de 1 millón de árboles en Nebraska, y considerando que el Día de Árbol ahora se observa en todo el país y el mundo, y considerando que los árboles pueden reducir la erosión de nuestra preciosa tierra vegetal por el viento y el agua, reducir los costos de calefacción y refrigeración, moderar la temperatura, limpiar el aire, producir oxígeno que da vida y proporcionar un hábitat para la vida silvestre. Y por cuanto los árboles en nuestra ciudad aumentan el valor de propiedades, mejoran la vitalidad económica de las áreas comerciales y embellecen nuestra comunidad. Y considerando que el alcalde y el consejo se comprometen con las operaciones, los programas, las iniciativas, la legislación y los recursos que apoyan la copa de los árboles de la ciudad. Por lo tanto, se resuelve que el alcalde y el consejo de la ciudad de Riverdale Park proclaman por la presente el 29 de abril de 2022 como el Día de Árbol en la ciudad de Riverdale Park y exhortan a todos en nuestra comunidad a observar este día con programas, actividades y ceremonias apropiadas. Muchas gracias. And moving on from Arbor Day, there's a proclamation in honor of Earth Month 2022. Whereas care for the earth is central to our survival, and whereas Earth Day has evolved from the 1970 teach-in on college campuses to 51 years of action involving 190 countries and more than 1 billion people. And whereas despite ongoing efforts by many, the earth remains in dire need of attention and action on the local, state, national, and international levels. And whereas there is a need to expand the local tree canopy to improve water quality, to reduce waste and litter, and to educate each other on improving the environment. And whereas the town of Riverdale Park has established a vision and commitment to sustainability and has created a sustainability committee which is comprised of active and dedicated volunteers focused on improving the local environment. And whereas the town of Riverdale Park has developed the Go Green initiative and associated grant programs, installed energy efficient features and fixtures on town buildings, and incorporates sustainable practices into its daily operations. And whereas highlighting April as Earth Month provides a necessary focus while advocating for Earth Day everyday action. Now therefore be it resolved that the mayor and council of the town of Riverdale Park do hereby proclaim April as Earth Month and encourage all residents, businesses, visitors, and employees to join with the Riverdale Park Sustainability Committee in taking action every day to improve our planet and make our lives and the lives of future generations healthy and sustainable. En español, proclamación, una proclamación en honor al mes de la Tierra 2022. Considerando que el cuidado de la tierra es fundamental para nuestra supervivencia y considerando que el Día de la Tierra ha evolucionado desde la enseñanza de 19.070 en los campos universitarios hasta 51 años de acción que involucran a 190 países y más de millones de personas, y considerando que, a pesar de los esfuerzos en curso de muchos, la Tierra sigue necesitando urgentemente atención y acción a nivel local, estatal, nacional e internacional, y considerar es necesario expandir el dosel de los árboles locales, mejorar la calidad de agua, reducir los desechos y la basura y educar a los demás sobre cómo mejorar el medio ambiente. Y considerando que la ciudad de Riverdale Park ha establecido una visión y un compromiso con la sostenibilidad y ha creado una comité de sostenibilidad que está compuesto por voluntarios activos y dedicados enfocados en mejorar el medio ambiente local. y considerando que la ciudad de Riverdale Park ha desarrollado la iniciativa Go Green y los programas de subvenciones asociadas, ha instalado características accesorias de eficiencia energética en los edificios de la ciudad y incorpora prácticas sostenibles en sus operaciones diarias, y considerando que desde abril como el mes de tierra proporciona un enfoque necesario al tiempo que aboga por la acción del Día de la Tierra todos los días. Ahora, por lo tanto, se resuelve que el alcalde y el consejo de la ciudad de Riverdale Park proclaman por la presente abril como el mes de la tierra y alientan a todos los residentes, negocios, visitantes y empleados a unirse al Comité de Sostenibilidad de Riverdale Park para tomar acción todos los días para mejorar nuestro planeta y hacer que nuestras vidas y las de las generaciones futuras sean saludables y sostenibles. Thank you very much. Those years were hard for me in Spanish today. Sorry about that. Let me check in on the agenda. The next presentation is a presentation of the fiscal year 2023 proposed operating and capital improvement budget. And I believe the Gentry has returned. Gentry Jones, Deputy Director of Finance Services. Mr. Jones.
Actually, Mr. Mayor, it's going to be me talking for a little while tonight.
Okay, thank you.
So good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Let me share my screen and the members of the community. So a few things. We do not have the link to the proposed FY 2023 operating capital improvement budget this evening. We had some staff items, issues come up, and we were short-staffed for the last number of days. And so I have communicated this to the mayor ahead of time, as well as to Councilmember Lingua, the chair of the council's finance committee. We will have the link to the proposed budget by tomorrow evening. Staff need to insert the page numbers and create the table of contents. But other than that, the budget is put together. So I wanted to take a few minutes this evening and just talk a little bit about the budget process, how we got here, and some things that you may see that are different. As mentioned in earlier meetings, the town did receive the Government Finance Officers Association Distinguished Budget Presentation Award. We fully anticipate that we will continue to receive this award because we follow their criteria. And we continually make the improvements that the review committee recommends. So we receive recommendations on how we can improve it, and we act on those recommendations each and every year. So I am pleased to share with you this evening that we have a balanced operating budget, and I would describe it as a very robust capital improvement budget. New feature this year is section 20. As returning members of the council may remember, there's 19 basic sections of the budget. We have a 20th section for ARPA, the spending plan. And so you will have 20 sections to review. And it's noted here, and we've been talking about it, we are in an uncertain time. 2 years ago, as we were putting the budget together in March of 20, we had the pandemic hit, and we had uncertain times. Then we had the pandemic continue and uncertain times. And now we have inflation, geopolitical issues, we have supply chain disruptions, and we have a persistent pandemic. And all those things have to be taken into account as we on the staff team make the best projections we can for both revenue and expenditures. And so that's what we've done here in this budget. And we reorganized a few things. So I believe all members of the council, including those elected last spring, are familiar with the council's vision and commitment statements. And so we've organized some things in the budget message related to budgeting our values. We're budgeting for our vision and the commitments that the mayor and council have enacted. So you'll notice when you read through this, and I'm not going to read this to you this evening, but when you do read through this, you'll notice that we have some things organized by the vision and commitment statements, as well as a link to where they can be found on the website. And the budget process, as we know, began in earnest in December, but it's really a year-long process. We will start the next budget process on the staff side as soon as we close out or begin to close out the current fiscal year. So during the summer is when we start talking about it. Those conversations become public in December of every year. And then we go through an exercise from December through May, very public exercise, to discuss the town's finances and for the council to eventually adopt a budget by the end of May. We are projecting a healthy unallocated fund balance by the end of June of 2023 of $3.8 million. And so GFOA says that you should have at least 16.67% of unallocated funds at any given time. I would argue that given the uncertainty we face, we should have a lot more than that, and we do. And so what we're projecting is a little over a year from now, we'll land at about 2.6 times the minimum amount. And you all are familiar with the budget calendar. These are all the meetings. We've had, counting today, 10 meetings where we've talked about the budget, where public comment has been welcomed. We will continue this, and starting this Saturday, we will have our first of 2 budget public hearings, and those last many hours for a thorough review of the proposed budget. We'll have the second one on April 23rd, and staff will be present to walk through the budget and to respond to any questions or concerns that the council may have. Our latest projections for this fiscal year is that revenues will exceed expenditures by 1.5. And that's healthy, but that should not be viewed as a surplus. Because as you'll see when we get into the actual budget, we make transfers from the general fund to pay for capital improvements. We make transfers from the general fund to pay for economic development activities or community development activities, or to add to OPEB, other post-employment benefits. We segregate some funds there. So there's a variety of things that happen with that 1.5 for prudent financial planning. The proposed budget, one thing that I want to touch on tonight, and And it's mentioned further in more detail in sections of the budget, and that is our assessable base. We talked to the council about this a number of weeks ago, where we had seen a contraction in the values, and the majority of that is attributed to one building. We still do not have an answer as to why one building lost $27 million in value, but that's a real number. The other thing is that we have 15 properties, commercial properties, that have values in excess of $2 million per property. Actually, it's combined, those values are about worth about $200 million, that have active appeals. They're appealing their assessments. And I spoke with the state on this, and the state's confident that they've already factored this in. These aren't new appeals. The state was aware of these appeals prior to the state completing the constant yield notice. And so the state's confident in their numbers, but there's still a risk there that their assessments may be lowered through the appeal process. But we won't necessarily know the outcome of those appeals until well beyond the start of the new fiscal year. Some things to note right off the bat: we're recommending a 2.75% cost of living adjustment for all staff. The pay range plan has anywhere between a 1.5 and a 2.5 possibility of a merit step, depending on where someone is placed in the scale. The defined benefit contribution remains flat at 20.6% of base pay, and the healthcare premium is increased by 11%. So you'll see that we're including a lot more graphs this year. So this is the first, I believe. But as you go through, you'll see a lot more graphs to illustrate what's happening and over time. And so this gives a snapshot over the last 5 years of the major categories. And the town has 5 major categories: the salary, the benefits, contractual services, operating expenses, and other operating expenses. And with some variation, you see a pattern here. The vast majority of the town's funds are spent on salary and benefits. There's very, very small amount in comparison spent on contractual services and operating expenditures. I include a version of this last paragraph in every one of my budget messages. And so I'm going to read this one part. Budgets are designed to be the best calculated and strategic determinations that can be made given what is known at the time. Cash management and overall budget administration are crucial in every fiscal year. And the uncertainty that we continue to face makes these efforts more important. The proposed budget provides a balanced approach to navigate these uncertain times while positioning the town for continued success. So the staff team, the budget committee, the leadership team, our approach has been conservative. And I will call it a slow, steady hand, if you will, is how we've tried to navigate the budget in terms of putting proposals in front of the council, and then how we administer the budget as well. Any questions so far? The next section of the budget, it reviews the town's vision statement, our structure, list all members of the council, the leadership team, the budget committee. And I'm just going to highlight a few things on these following pages, things that we're doing different this year. So we've always listed demographics, but new this year is the little sub bullet, if you will, showing the delta. So if our population is 7351, what's changed? By how much has it changed? Have things increased or decreased? So we're trying to provide more analysis there. Median household income, it's 84,695. It's up from 79,219. And the area of concern all the time as we construct programs are lower income areas. And so the poverty level, it increased 0.4%, and we're up 37 individuals who are living below poverty. And Mr. Mayor, I can stop. I believe Councilmember Smith has a question.
Councilmember Smith.
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Town Manager, I was just a little late on the draw on your call for questions on the last section. I'm just wondering on the 11% premium increase, is that absorbed entirely by the town, or the town's part of a split, or how exactly does that impact our workers?
Yes, that's a good question, and I'm going to be getting into that in just a little bit, if we could hold that.
Sure.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
This charts the assessable base. We've had some significant growth, but you see that in 20 we had a slight dip, and now in 23 we have a slight dip. But the thing about our assessable base, the state does not include the values of the Calvert Tract. The Calvert Tract is commonly known as the Town of Riverdale Park Station Development. TRP, yeah, TRP RPS. That was our saying a number of years ago. When you factor in the growth of values in the Calvert Tract, and then you back out the little over $400,000 between administrative fees and debt service on the bridge, some money flows into the operating budget. And we do benefit from that, but it's not included in our assessable base because it's part of this TIF, a tax increment finance area. And so there's a chart that shows the Calvert Tract assessable base. And you see that we've had a steady progression there. As we look to out years, what's going to be really important is the build out of that development. While we lost 27 million on one industrial property, this development as a whole, and it's the pilot house apartments that's carrying the majority of it, their values rose considerably, about a little over 31 million, I believe. So we've seen a nice increase in values there to help offset what we lost elsewhere. Another thing you're going to notice in the budget this year, we've added photographs, and that's something that was recommended by GFOA to pull out some photos that will illustrate and for the reader what it is that or who the Town of Riverdale Park is. I'll say it that way. So here's background on who we are, the type of government, the departments that we have, and what we do, the services that we provide. And then there's a section here, it's good for us all to be familiar with it, with the charter requires in terms of the budget. And so I'm going to actually cover just a couple of quick things here. So it says that I have to present a budget to you all at least 60 days before the beginning of the fiscal year. And the budget, then the total of anticipated revenue shall equal or exceed the total proposed expenditures. The budget shall be public record, open to inspection, town office, etc. The budget adoption talks about that the council shall hold a public hearing after 2 weeks prior notice. So we are meeting these requirements, but there's a line here that we need to always be tighter than, because it says the budget shall be adopted by 4 affirmative votes not later than June 30th of each fiscal year. So the charter gives wider latitude here. We really need the budget adopted, though, by the end of May, because we have to report our tax rate to the county before the 1st of June. And so while the charter allows this, in practical purposes, the budget has to be adopted by the end of May. And that's why we always try to deliver the budget to the council the first week in April, to allow for the 2 public hearings, so the town exceeds the requirement of the 1 public hearing, and to have further discussion and examination of the proposed budget. The budget assumptions, we've talked about these before. There's nothing new here. We haven't changed any of the assumptions that we discussed with the council previously. Councilmember Smith, I'll call your attention to this section. When we talk about the healthcare benefit. So as you can see by first the table, how the cost for healthcare has risen. So you have the total premium, and then you have the split. So the way the plan is designed, the plan's designed for a 75-25 split, where the town picks up 75%. What we have done in some years, depending on finances, we've picked up additional percentages. And that's what we're proposing here. The town will pick up 78%, and the participants will pick up 22%. Still a lot of money. It's a lot of money for the town, and it's a lot of money for employees. I go into some detail in the budget about stressors and things that we need to be concerned about. So I'll talk about those here. And one of those is the healthcare. So we have pretty much an even split between single participants and family plans. And so if we look at the single participant, the town's annual share is $10,000. A family plan, the town's share is $21,000. So if half of the staff who are participants on the single plan have a qualifying event, and they switch from a single plan to a family plan, then the town's cost goes up considerably. There's no way we can budget for all of that. We do factor in every vacant position. So every position that's currently vacant, and we have some hiring in process right now, we budget them as if they're getting the family plan. So we end up with a little bit of wiggle room to work with. In my years of doing this, that seems to have us land in an okay place. We also have a health and wellness fund that in fiscal 23, we're told by the healthcare provider that we are on track to receive a rebate, a $60,000 rebate. So if that happens and we have other qualifying events, we'll have funds to be able to address that. Does that answer your question, sir, in terms of the split?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Listician. I would just comment that, as we get into future budgets, I would personally support seeing that employer contribution share grow. But I'll let you keep going because I know a lot of people tonight are trying to get somewhere by 9:30.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know there was a.
There's a sport happening.
Oh, no, okay. Because we were all hoping we would be here until 11. So, yes, I'll go through this more quickly then. Another graph just showing how healthcare expense has increased over time. Talk about the different funds and the creation of the Economic Recovery Strategy Fund. And this is where your ARPA funds are held. OPEB, it's in large part an unfunded liability. We're going to move an additional 118,000 there to get it up to 400,000. So we have some money there. And this is just designating funds. So if we have folks who retire after a full career, the individual is eligible to continue their health care. And that's what OPEB would pay. Our finance team makes calculations on this, and along with our auditor, it could be a lot of money if we had folks retire after a full career. The Community Development Fund as well, we will have at least $50,000 there. I already talked about the pay range plan, the cost of living adjustment, but there's an inflationary stipend that's included in the budget. And so the 2.75 cost of living adjustment, that is a structural change in the budget. And there's 5-year projections in the budget book as well. And I would encourage you to take a look at the 5-year projections, because we are projecting, we're being very conservative on our numbers, but we're projecting an anticipated deficit next year and the following year and the following year. And that's okay when you're looking 5 years out, and it helps us make decisions today and tomorrow for the future. The inflationary stipend would be $2,500 per employee, and we would be paying that from ARPA funds. And we'd be using one-time dollars for one-time expenditures. And then talk about the economic uncertainty. I've already mentioned the inflationary rates. And then we reflect a little bit on our revenues. New this year, we point out how some of our cost centers are affected by restricted use revenue. So we have fees for service, and a fee has to generally be in line with the cost of service. Doesn't have to be exact. If you're within tens of thousands of dollars, you're fine. But you can't have fees that exceed the cost of service by a high percentage, because that becomes a tax, and we don't have taxing authority. But you'll see here, for example, our neighborhood services, our code office, you see where essentially our fees slightly exceeds the expense. Now, back in 19, we had a lot of building permit money, but that was the townhomes for Riverdale Park Station. Other than that, our fees for service and our costs for service are running fairly parallel. I included this chart. Now, this is 2023 projected. That number is going to be higher. We're hoping not. But it's probably going to be higher. We do not want to budget fine money, and a large part of this public safety restricted use revenue is from the Safe Speed for Students program. And also factored in here is the annual grant, state police aid, which we receive about $163,000 a year because we have a police department. If you look at the police services expenditure, so when you get to that section in the budget, that would be the blue line. But if you subtract out the net revenue from the different programs, so we pay for the program and we have the impact of the revenue. So it's really a measure of general fund dollars, if you will. How many tax dollars are going into the police department versus how much does the police department cost? And there's a difference there because we receive restricted use revenue that has to be used for public safety. And this is our public safety department. So it lowers the cost of the police department. Any questions on anything so far? So fuel expenses.
Mr. Lecision?
Yes, sir.
Just one quick one and you can, if possible, get us the information later, but I'm just wondering if the median income and poverty stats can be broken out by ward.
I will defer to Director Cheltenham and ask him if he could follow up on that.
Good, and I'll take that answer later. You can keep it moving along.
But the vehicle fuel expense, that obviously factors into why our budget is so much more this year. As you see in 2019, we were at 85,000. Then we stopped buying fuel on our own and we participated in the county plan. So that dropped from 85 to 41. That's when we got rid of our own pumps and our own contracting to supply fuel, and we joined the county plan. And we've seen some increases. And I believe this year we're budgeted for 73,000. And because of gas prices, we have already exceeded 73,000. I think we're about 78,000 now. So we're thinking we're going to be in the low 100s by the end of the fiscal year. And the county billing runs about 40 days behind. So we're feeling pretty confident we'll exceed 100,000. And then next year, that's our best guess. That's our best determination based upon all the uncertainty we have. I've already talked about the cost of living and inflationary stipend. This just shows we've been slow and steady on COLAs. I've mentioned this to the council before. It's been 1%, 1%, 1%. And I actually think slow and steady is a good way to go. Some of our neighbors have been up and down, and some years not offering a COLA at all. And again, the average of what our neighbors are doing now is 2.5. And then what we're proposing to you is to be 2.75. More information on healthcare expense and the defined benefit plan expense. So defined benefit plan, that's another area that long-term we have to confront, that we currently pay 20.6% of salaries. So we were locked in for that rate in 22. Our ADC, actuarially determined contribution, is the same for fiscal 23. There was actually some talk back in December our actuary had talked about perhaps lowering the ADC because PNC has done a really good job managing the fund, and the fund has grown substantially. But now with volatility, they're not recommending that today. So we'll see what happens. They'll do another study and evaluation during the summer, and they'll give us a number sometime in the fall for the next 2 years. That they project out 2 years at a time. Our overtime expenditures, what you will see when you look at the individual budgets is overtime has fallen throughout the pandemic, and now it's starting to tick back up. And a large part of that is because of courts. Courts were closed, less folks needing to, or less police officers needing to attend court, and that has changed, and that's starting to rise again. The workers' compensation, this is something that we as an employer need to do better. And as a staff team, we need to do better. The staff team is used to hearing from me saying that if we want to have the best equipment, and we want to have the best training, and we want to have cost of living increases, and we want to have good merit raises, we need to keep down our workman's compensation insurance whenever possible. Some accidents will occur. Some accidents are preventable. And what we have seen is a steady increase in our cost of workman's compensation from $100,000 basically in 2019 to nearly $300,000 next year. There's the way workman's compensation insurance is calculated, you have different premiums for different classifications of employees. So you have one for police, one for public works, and one for office workers. But then they factor in what's known as an experience modification. And you want a number that's 1.0 or less. Our experience modification, because of the number of workplace accidents, is 1.6. And so in the employee services goals for fiscal 23 is to redouble the efforts on workplace safety. And we will always have some accidents, things happen, but we need to do a better job on preventing accidents. And as you can see, $180,000 increase or $171,000 increase. That's 2 positions. So that's something that the staff team is very aware of. So the public hearing for the real property tax rate, we're not required to have one. So we are proposing that we have one. We're just not required to have one because on the constant yield notice, we're exempt from having a public hearing because the reported assessable base by the State Department of Assessment and Taxation contracted. And so since it has contracted, and we would actually have to raise that rate per the state's numbers to bring in the same amount of tax, a public hearing is not required. Staff recommend that we have a public hearing anyway, because it fits into the vision that the mayor and council have established for transparency and community engagement. The last page here is the constant yield notice, which we've reviewed with you previously. And as you can see, the tax rate would have to increase to 0.6552 to bring in that additional $9,400 to bring in the same amount as we would in the current year. So any questions on any of this?
Mr. Town Manager, I actually have a question.
Yes, sir.
I don't see anybody else raising their hand. You and I have discussed offline that there are some properties that don't appear in our assessable base that we think that them not being there is a mistake. Um, have you heard anything from the state on any progress on those properties?
We have not, and so I spoke with the state supervisor the other day. I'm thinking that was Wednesday, and so we had a long conversation, and we don't have an update on that. And so that's the office building at 4600 River Road. It's currently listed as exempt, and but if that changes, and it's an if until it's written down, if that changes, that would provide the town with an additional approximately $124,000 in real property tax revenue.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Lingua, your hand is raised.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Lustician, if you back up to the point you're making about the workman's comp and essentially what we're paying for insurance and our rate at 1.6. I was wondering if you could just touch on a little bit more what it is staff's looking to do in terms of training in safety, and also or training also just as a way to expand employees' knowledge on various tasks that they may be looking to do.
Yeah, so we are going to launch a comprehensive safety program that looks at both unsafe conditions and unsafe acts. And that will include the Health, Safety, and Wellness Committee taking an active role in leading that. So it's not just top down, but it's all staff members involved in safety activities. And I think a large part of it, sir, is starting here and sharing these numbers and saying, you know, I hear requests from department managers that it would be nice to hire an additional person. There's your additional person. We have to, absolutely have to have staff do everything they can to be as safe as possible. We provide training, we provide equipment, and some accidents are going to happen. They are, but many accidents are avoidable. And whether that's avoiding an unsafe condition, finding it before someone is injured, and alerting them and fixing it, or preventing unsafe acts. So Mr. Smith is going to lead that charge along with the Health, Safety, and Wellness Committee. Does that answer
Thank
the
you.
question, sir?
It does. And I know this is probably to bring that score down back to 1.0 is more than likely going to take some time to do. Yeah, I mean, I'd be very surprised to see it back down that low in a year's time. I imagine this is going to probably take 2, possibly more years, really, to get back down to that number.
Yes, sir. In order to get us back down to a 1.0 or below experience modification, I would estimate that's 2 to 3 year process. And I don't have the numbers this evening, but I believe that the town's workman's compensation numbers were higher than this back in 15 and 16 and 17. And then, or 15 and 16, and then we got them down in 17 and 18, and they've been creeping back up. But to have a number of 280,000 that's something that needs to change.
I agree. Thank you.
So I just had a few other things I wanted to touch on. There's finance policies there. I wanted to touch primarily on this page, and then I'll end it for the evening just by looking at the budget summary sheet. So we have a position schedule, authorized position schedule. And so we show a history, fiscal 21, 22, and proposed for 23, and what those changes are. The gray highlighted area on your screen here, I was just pointing at my screen, but then I recognized no one could see that. This program specialist is unfunded. There's a request for this position, and we currently don't have a way to pay for it. And so it will stay in the budget from our perspective as unfunded, unless something changes during the year. So we may come back to you at a future time during the year if funding becomes available. But in terms of overall numbers, when you look at the bottom and you see we're up by 2.75 positions. I want to make sure that we have clarity here. So that includes the unfunded position, which takes you down to 1.75. That also includes the ARPA program manager position that's funded by ARPA funds. So that takes you down to 0.75. The 0.75 additional positions, there's two things happening here. One is adding an additional part-time, it's a quarter-time position as a telecommunicator in our police dispatch. We have found that by having a part-time telecommunicator, we can better control overtime cost. So the proposal is to go from one part-time telecommunicator to two. The other 0.5 position is to take the automated enforcement position, which is a half-time position, and create a full-time position there. And to rework, rebrand, and to refocus that position. So currently that position is responsible for reviewing and handling all automated enforcement processes, including going to court on automated tickets issued in the police department. The rework of this position is as a community safety coordinator. And the community safety coordinator would be the town's lead person for the Walk, Bike, Drive Safety Initiative, who would work with our traffic engineers and with Director Lewis on identifying hazards, developing solutions, developing and working with Director Lewis CIP projects to change the environment. Would also be our education person. And it would be a person who would meet with members of the community, with organizations in the community, with schools, promoting safety. So it's moving from simply enforcement to having staff person dedicated to education and encouragement and environment or engineering, changing the physical conditions, better signage, things of that nature, to aid in having a safer community for those walking, biking, and driving. And so there'll be more on that when we review the police department budget, but I wanted to give you a preview of that this evening. Any questions on that? And then the last thing, I'm going to actually jump ahead of the fund balance sheets and just look at the summaries here. So I mentioned that we have a balanced budget. And so if you look in the fourth column, fiscal 2023, the balanced budget number on operating is $8,774,595. And you can see that our actual revenue in 2021 was $9 million and some change. And we're anticipating 9.2 in this year. Again, we approach things from a conservative way. And so we weren't going to say, well, we're guaranteed 9.2 next year, because we're not sure what's going to happen in terms of economic stressors. So when we went through, we were conservative in our approach on our revenue projections, and then subsequently on what we're projecting for expenditures. As I mentioned, this is a balanced budget, so on the expenditure side, we are coming in at that same number of 8.7, almost 8.8. Now, this represents a significant increase over the approved budget in 2022. It's about 12.67% increase year over year. And typically, I bring you budgets that are anywhere from a 7.3 to 7.6, 7.7 increase. I will say that the additional employee cost, as well as our concerns over inflation, is what has driven us from a mid 7% increase year over year to a just north of 12.5%. So we look forward to working with the council and the community and explaining the numbers in detail at the hearings. And if there's no additional questions, Mr. Mayor, I'll end my comments here.
Thank you, Mr. Town Manager. Are there additional council questions on this presentation? Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to highlight, Mr. Lestitian, I love that we're putting photos in there so folks can see our community and whatnot. I think that's great. I haven't looked through page by page, but it seemed like all of those photos were from Ward 1, which is exciting. I could be wrong.
Yeah, I'm not sure, sir. I mean, we try to do a nod to the whole town, but
I'll just say what I noticed is they were at least disproportionately from Ward 1, and I'm
okay.
proud to represent Ward 1. I love our community here in historic Ward 1, and it's great. I also know that it's important for our residents to see themselves in our work as a town, and that our demographics and our challenges are not, as you know, Mr. Lestitian, consistent across all wards. Oh, there we go. I see. I missed that one. So yeah, I wanted to highlight that I think it's very important that not just the folks in Ward 1 are represented in anything we're putting out as a town, not just this book. That said, overall, I think that's great. I thank the staff for putting this together for the town, for us as the council. As you know, I'd love to see those inflationary stipends be permanent salary increases. We've talked about that before, and I understand what you're presenting here, but I just want to put that on the record there. And I'm glad that we're distributing a lot of our that is coming from ARPA funds, and that those funds are making it back to our employees. And also just on the pension, I think 20% employee contribution is very reasonable number. I understand with things being volatile, that could change, but I think it sounds like from what you presented here, our town has a very healthy pension plan, which is a hobby horse of mine. So I thank you for that.
Thank you very much, sir. The on the inflationary stipend, if I could just comment briefly on that, the one thing that we've talked about as a staff team is that by having a stipend, it actually will benefit our lower wage earners more by not having that as a percent of their earnings, but as a flat $2,500, because $2,500 to someone making 45,000 is larger percent than someone making higher amounts. And so that's one consideration we have. The other is when we look at the 5-year projections, I'm actually concerned, not alarmed, but concerned, and I'm fiscally conservative. And I think part of the staff's job is to be looking at this, say, not just today, but where you're going to be in the out years. So when we look at the 5-year projections, if we want to try to maintain the same tax rate and not exceed 0.654, then I think we want to be cautious. I would urge the council to be cautious in increasing COLAs or structural changes. I would just urge caution right now. If this inflationary issue goes away in a year or so and things normalize, that's wonderful. But when I'm looking at the build out of development in town, whether it's the additional buildings in Riverdale Park Station or other commercial areas that are not necessarily at their highest and best use, I'm concerned with timetables. When will properties be upgraded? When will they be improved? And when will those increased values then translate into revenue for the town? So a lot of it's going to be timing as well, sir. And but I do agree with your point that we have to treat our employees well. One thing that's funded in this budget, in the employee services budget, we put $30,000 for a consultant to conduct a classification and compensation study. And that'll give us a fuller picture when we're talking next year. How do we compete with our competitors, with the other municipalities, in terms of being able to compensate our employees properly? So I know on the staff team, we look forward to that report.
Thank you, Mr. Town Manager. As you know, I work as a day job helping public employees advocate for their professional benefits and wages, and ensuring that they're paid as professionals so that municipalities, school districts, et cetera, can recruit and retain the best workers. And I'm also the son of a public employee. So I understand everything you're laying out there, and that's great. The 2,500, that's going to impact our lesser paid employees more. We also know that when inflation subsides, lesser paid that impact of inflation steadily going away is felt slower by people who make more. So
Yes,
it's great we're giving them $2,500 this year. But if we determine that inflation isn't growing next year or a year from now or whenever, that effect is less felt by folks who make less, and then we're essentially cutting their pay by $2,500 in the year, not to mention all of their years beyond that they're 1.75 or 2.75, which I think is a great COLA for this year. That 2.75 or whatever it is in coming years is calculated at $2,500 less than when we give this as a stipend. I understand, you know, all those things. You've been managing towns longer than I've been in town government, so I don't have to tell you that, but that's my position on it. I'm one vote on this council, and I understand, you know, everything that goes with that. I'm just always going to be an advocate for doing more for public employees, because I think our town treats our public employees, from what I've seen in my short time on the council, better than most municipalities or jurisdictions. But we could always do more, I think, in this country generally. We don't do enough for public employees, even if we are doing better than most. So again, I appreciate all the work everyone put in this. It's fantastic stuff, and I'm happy to see it.
And point taken, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there additional council questions for the town manager on this presentation? Councilmember Lingua.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Listitian, if you could back up to that employee schedule. I was noticing some numbers there where we are hovering right around that point where we reach the 50 employee threshold.
Yes, sir.
Is there anything that the town needs to be ready for in terms of how laws are applied to number of employees within a given organization?
And
In terms of rules that go into effect, be that with leave or anything else?
yes, it's a good question, sir. And I would say this: the way that we manage the staff team, we while we're not compelled, depending on the number of employees we have on a given day. Well, let me rephrase that. I think you're referring to FMLA, Family Medical Leave Act, as the primary driver. And so all governments have to comply with FMLA for any qualified employee. If you have less than 50 employees, you don't have any qualified employees. So it's a little strange the way the federal act is written. But with that being said, sir, the town has always met or exceeded the FMLA requirements. So even though we have not in the past been required to follow FMLA, we have, at least in the 5 years that I've been here. Every situation that we've had, we have either met or exceeded federal guidelines. And so I don't believe we have additional exposure at this time, but by crossing that 50 threshold.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional council questions or comments on this presentation? Any public comments or questions on this presentation? Okay, thank you, Mr. Town Manager. Very much appreciated. And we can hop forward in the agenda to my report. And I will try to be a little bit fast since Councilmember Smith has alerted me that many people are watching something starting at 9:30. I was contacted by Councilmember Mayers after the meeting started. She is ill this evening. I'm not certain of her attendance, but I think under new business it would be good to forgive her or to forgive the absence so that we can be sure that we don't have to declare her seat vacant. Councilmember Sadiq was absent at the beginning of the meeting. He has arrived. I'd like to start out my report by thanking the staff for developing the budget that we saw the presentation from. This is a massive task each year. And each year the staff doesn't just dust off the old one and update the numbers. They update the quality, they update the information, and this is very much appreciated that we have a beautiful and thorough and transparent budget to let the members of the public and the members of the council know how we are spending more money and how we're collecting our money. Those of you who might have missed it, we had a State of the Town presentation by the town manager in mid-March, and I encourage you, if you did not see it, to go find the recording of it and get an update on everything that happened last year. I received a phone call from our senator, Senator Paul Pinsky. I believe it was last week, it might have been the week before, informing me that our major bond bill, which we had requested, says free money from the state in order to reroute the hiker-biker trail through our town center and rearrange the roads and the parking and everything else. An amount of approximately $850,000. It has been approved and we will be receiving it. We had two other requests and I have not yet been able to get a firm answer on what happened to those. But apparently there's a lot of money at the state level and a lot of bond bills were funded. So I'm hopeful that at least one of those was also funded. I hope to find out soon. The town a few meetings ago established a redistricting committee, and I have interest from one person. I have reached out to another person who has generally been interested in the sort of topics involved with redistricting. Anyone else who is interested, please reach out to town staff or myself. I am looking for a third member for that committee. I would like to thank the town for sending me last week to the Maryland Mayors Association annual meeting. This meeting generally occurs early February, late January, early February, and was delayed because of the Omicron surge that was underway. And so we met in Annapolis. A few highlights from the meeting. One was that there was a detailed economic forecast given by a banker, while I had a few details that I would quibble with him on. The overall structure, I think, is correct, and he is expecting, and other bankers and other economists are expecting that the Federal Reserve will intervene in the economy, and that we are likely to see inflation over the next several months, as has been anticipated, and then likely a recession as the interest rates are raised and the economy is slowed down. We'll see. I can share the slides from that presentation with other members of the council if you are interested. For legislation that we had underway, House Bill 1057, which was looking to completely reorganize and transfer the parks and recreation programs from MNC PPC to the county, was amended more or less as we requested. It will be a study group only and no activity during the year. I was pleased to hear that news. Many other bills were either passed or passed during the meeting or shortly after we got there. The end of the session is showing up, including bills addressing climate change, cannabis legalization, and something I think is very important, paid sick and family leave. That all of these were passed and were sent to the governor's desk, and I believe that they're expecting him to veto some of them, and that they will come back and they hope to override the vetoes before the end of the session, which is about a week from now. The one other bill, which was the negotiations were announced at the mayor's meeting, and we had a reception on Thursday evening at the governor's mansion, and the governor announced that there had been a breakthrough in negotiations over highway user revenues. The amount of highway user revenues expected to go up, and the sunset will be removed. And this is good news for the section of restricted revenues that we get from that. I haven't yet seen what finally came out, what was finally voted on, but it certainly sounded like the negotiations had been completed. Everyone had pretty much agreed, and so that's all good news. I visited most of our legislative team, both the House of Delegates and Senator Pinsky, and discussed various issues of the town with both of them, with all of them. I saw Delegate Healy only long enough to say hello in the lobby. You know, we were actually lobbying our delegates in the lobby of the House building. One thing about this meeting that disappointed me, which leads into the next section, is that I was one of only maybe 10% of the mayors who was actually observing careful COVID protocols. We were in a not particularly well ventilated meeting room. I would say that, as I said, about 10% of the mayors were actually wearing masks. A higher fraction from Prince George's County. I think that we learned our lesson early in the pandemic and have taken it to heart. But many other mayors were not doing that. And it's a time where you might think, because of the low case rates, because of the low hospitalization rates, because of the low death rates, that we are beyond COVID. But there are a lot of indications that that's not true. And I will admit that had we had higher numbers, I would not have gone to this meeting. And so I was glad to take advantage of the low numbers in order to go. But moving on to COVID issues, just as a heads up, I think most of you already know this, but free testing kits are being distributed Wednesdays at Town Hall to residents of the town. Those tests are distributed from 9:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. Last Monday, the FDA approved boosters. This is shot number 4 for those who are over 50 and also for those who are immune compromised. Just as a reminder, these boosters typically provide enhanced protection from infection for something in the range of 3 to 6 months. Tends to degrade over that time. So it starts out perhaps 95% and then degrades down to 60%. And by the end of the time, then it may be very little protection from infection, but there is still greatly enhanced protection from severe disease and hospitalization. These boosters start working. You get this new protection, a number that's a few days after receiving it. So I would say 3 days to a week is a reasonable guess for that. And I am planning, based on the numbers that I'm seeing, based on the case rates that I'm seeing, I'm planning on getting mine probably sometime next week. And also, just as a reminder, if you are currently unvaccinated, if you currently have only 1 shot in you, then you have a much longer time scale for receiving immunity. Unvaccinated, 5 to 6 weeks in order to get to full immunity. If you've had 1 shot, then it can be still a few weeks after you get your 2nd shot in order for you to receive that immunity. So what are the numbers that are driving me and the statistics and the information that's driving me to be concerned? There's a variant of Omicron, which is now the majority variant in this country. We still have low case rates. It's the cousin of the Omicron variant that hit us in January, and it's the so-called BA2 variant. And this variant is raging in Europe. In the UK, they have the highest hospitalization rates from COVID of the entire pandemic at this exact moment. That's correct. Highest hospitalization rates during the entire pandemic. Case rates are rising quickly. They've gotten to high levels in New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, other New England states. And one of the scary things that's being reported is that people are getting reinfected with BA2, even those who were infected just in January from BA1. So there doesn't seem to be a lot of immunity from infection. The vaccines are still quite effective, but not as effective as they were on BA1, not as effective as they were on Delta in the fall. So keep getting vaccinated and so on. One question mark, the data is a little bit delayed, a little bit spotty, is whether DC is seeing a case rate increase similar to the New England states. Not sure of that at this time, but I'm concerned. So the bottom line is stay tuned. Please stay as safe as you can. I know that Council Member Fo has his mosquito traps out, and the reason to do that is to catch mosquitoes early in the season, because then you get fewer of them later on. It's the same thing with COVID. If you avoid having transmissions early in the wave, you have fewer of them later on, then everyone ends up healthier. Stay tuned, stay safe. If you haven't gotten vaccinated, if you haven't completed your vaccinations, please do all of those things. Just keep us safe. And that concludes my report. Thank you very much. That leads us next in the agenda to the town manager's report. Mr. Town Manager.
Yes, sir. And I just have a few things to remind folks of. We have the upcoming public hearings. I mentioned this before on the budget, one this Saturday, the 9th, and one on Saturday, April 23rd. The start time for both of those public hearings is 9:30 a.m. And also at the farmers market on April 14th, Luminous will hold a vaccination clinic and a diabetes screening. On the 23rd of April, the Anacostia Watershed Society Earth Day cleanup will be held from 10 until noon, and volunteers are needed. Thank you to Laura Katz for serving as the site leader again this year. And please check the town website as well as the April Town Crier for more information. The town's working with CCAR to support the Greater Riverdale Community Health Fair on April 21st, or I'm sorry, on May 21st. And this will be similar to their event they had a few months ago. Train Stop Tunes, which is a partnership between Riverdale Park Arts and the town, continues through the end of June on Fridays from 5 p.m. till 7 p.m. in Town Center. So if you're out and about, stop by to enjoy some music. There's no seating or anything provided there. It's just to try to have a placemaking through the sharing of good music. The mayor mentioned the test kits are available in Town Hall on Wednesdays. And then for the mayor and council and staff, you'll be receiving financial disclosure statement packets this week. And so when you complete those, please return them to Director Barnes's attention. The last thing I have is the community survey. Will be going out this week for establishing the position profile for the chief of police position. Several council members have already met with the consultant, and others are scheduled. If you have not been scheduled, contact myself. Director Barnes will be out for a few days. So on that, if you need to be scheduled, if you could reach out to me. And that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Town Manager. Are there any questions for the town manager? Seeing none, let's move on to the monthly finance report.
Mr. Jones.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council, members of the public. Tonight's finance report are much like the finance reports presented in the previous months. Tonight's reports, subject to audit, include a revenue and expenditure comparison dating from the beginning of the fiscal year, July 1st, up to March 31st, covering 2 previous months and the 2 previous fiscal years. So for the current fiscal year in March, revenue totaled $229,734. Expenditures totaled $511,111, with a net of negative $281,377. Year to date, revenue has totaled $7,819,308. So at this point, revenue is performing well. Town revenue is currently exceeding 100% of the budgeted total, with 3 months left in the fiscal year. Expenditures total $5,689,671. So spending is still conservative. At this point, expenditures are at roughly 68% of the budgeted amount, with 3 months left in the fiscal year. So overall, when we look at the net year to date, the town is at $2,100,000 $129,637. So at this point, given all of the circumstances with the geopolitical issues, COVID-19 and the pandemic, as the mayor just previously mentioned, the town is currently in a favorable financial standing. And as we present the budget in the upcoming weeks, we'll be able to show where we project to land at the end of the year, as well as our proposed budget amount for the next fiscal year. So that concludes the finance reports for tonight. I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Are there questions for the Deputy Director? I will just point out, as I always do whenever we have a negative number on this chart, that the negative 281,000 is just for March, and that we're actually doing overall very well for the year, as was pointed out for the year-to-date totals. Thank you, Mr. Jones. Councilman Lingwood, do you wish to make a motion to adopt the report subject to audit?
Yes. Yes, I would.
Seconded.
Like
Oh,
to
I'm
make a
sorry.
motion. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the finance report subject to audit.
Thank you, Councilman. Is there a second?
Seconded. I apologize, council member. Your response made me laugh. Seconded though.
Motion by Councilmember Lingua, seconded by Councilmember Foe. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Foe.
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua.
Aye.
Councilmember Sadiq.
Aye.
Councilmember Mejia.
Aye.
And Councilmember Mayers is absent this evening. So we have, I abstain, the motion passes 5-0-1. Move on to the correspondence summary. There was one item in the correspondence summary that I should have mentioned, and that is that the CDBG money, community development block grants, were revealed in the last several weeks. And we've received $150,000 to develop a tot lot. And I will need to make myself available to testify at the hearing for that in a couple of weeks, but that's good news. I don't believe there's anything else. The full documents are available to everyone. Does anyone have anything else they wish to discuss from the correspondence summary? Okay, I have not heard from the fire department. Has staff heard from the fire department?
We have not, sir.
Okay, so we'll skip the fire department report. That brings us to council, committee, and ward reports. Start with Councilmember Smith, Ward 1.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can y'all see me? Can y'all see me? Oh,
Yes.
sorry, if my own picture wasn't popping up there, and I should have been thankful for not having to look at the space for radio. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Really excited to hear about the bond bill and the great infrastructure work we're going to be able to do with that in Ward 1, particularly as hopefully we see new development in that area. It's very exciting. Thanks to you, Mr. Mayor, and everyone in the town staff that worked on that. And then I just wanted to mention to your not resolutions, what's the word? The proclamations you made earlier about Arbor Day and Earth Day, both occurring this month. Very exciting. I want to remind folks, do everything you can to be sustainable, to limit your carbon footprint. I know I got a little bit of a well-deserved scold from Miss Katz when we took a walk a few weeks ago about driving my truck to fish. I will say that I am in line for an electric pickup. I've just got to wait for it to roll off the assembly line. But apart from that, I mentioned here before, I'm an avid fisherman, particularly in Ward 2, where there's a few great spots. be mindful of the way that we are as humans impact habitats and all of the things that, like, we know we're in an interdependent ecosystem, right? And you may think that things, your actions don't impact that, but as somebody who spends a lot of time trying to figure out where the wildlife are and how to get a hold of them and then putting them back where they came from, not just in terms of how we disturb or leave things behind, but when we disturb what's already there. You never know what sort of trees and underbrush and whatnot contribute to forage for the wildlife and maintaining those habitats. So just a good note in April as we celebrate and observe Arbor Day and Earth Day. I think that is all I have for tonight, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Foe, Ward 2. Home of good fishing spots.
Good fishing spots, beautiful ideas, and people. I think that should be a slogan for Ward 2. How's everybody doing? I hope well. I've tried to make a component of these messages, just checking in. I think that's significantly important this time. I am currently on spring break. I am excited about that. It's been a difficult year for public employees. And I hope that everybody is looking at their schedule and looking at opportunities to get time off and to feed your individual soul to make sure that your mental health is where it needs to be. I look back at where I was a year ago, 40 pounds lighter, driving my wife insane, expecting a baby, having no idea how the heck that was going to work out. And here we are, on the precipice of Levon's first birthday, and just holy cow, this time has flown by. And it's just a remarkable time period to look back on and see what we've had to sacrifice and see also simultaneously what we have done and be remarkably proud of it. So I just wanted to check in. I am always available, and I just want to be available to anybody in these meetings, anybody in our town, anybody on town staff. I hope you are doing well. Love hearing Councilmember Smith talk about his commitment to, making sure that the employees of Riverdale Park are treated well. Councilmember Smith, my dad was a teacher. I got to sit on the picket lines with him on multiple occasions in my youth. And I saw a community break down and mistreat and just look at educators in a different light, and hearing your support always buoys my inspiration, because sitting in Fairfax County as a teacher for 20 years who has suffered through 9 pay freezes, God willing, the economics will allow us to treat our staff at Riverdale Park better than Fairfax County has treated its teachers over the time. So I always like to hear what you have to say. It always, makes me a little more proud of being a public sector employee my entire life. Okay, listen, I don't know about you, but I constantly on my table have pictures of Adam and Emily Plummer Park, and I'm constantly thinking of how we can make this space the best possible space that we can. So I just want to spit out some ideas that I have in the lazy meadow design that the town has liked the most. And I look at it and I just look at this as, just a space that we have such tremendous opportunity to do something really remarkable. So I just want to get my ideas out. I want to kick them around, and I want to see what we can come up with. First, I love signage at the entrances in the park. And if you look at, what it is we have from neighborhood design, there's entrances at multiple locations. Just being able to mark this space as Adam and Emily Plummer Park. You know what I mean? I want interpretive park signage throughout along the trails. There is a Smithsonian abstract that I've utilized a lot in here that it does a great job of one, telling the story of the plumbers simultaneously telling the story of the enslaved in Prince George's County. And I think if we can intermesh those two things, then we're going to do something absolutely stunningly remarkable here. I think Town Manager Lestitian mentioned potential rose gardens. And because Adam Francis Plummer was able to earn additional income outside of the plantation by selling his roses. And to me, that seems perfect. And last but not least, my wife has kind of driven this idea into my brain a little bit. So I want to, give a little bit of a honorarium to her. We love going to parks wherever we possibly can. Our arboretums, things like that. We were in Booth Bay Harbor in Maine, and we went to their coastal Maine gardens this year, and they had this meditation garden that was just remarkably beautiful. It's on the water, which I don't think we can create. It had schist, which I also don't know that we created. I don't know that's within the budget. But I love this idea that she put forward, because I wanted a monument for the enslaved or the unnamed enslaved. And she pushed forward the idea of potentially a water feature that is meant for a space of reflection. I can't think of something better off the top of my head than a place to honor the unnamed enslaved that lived in our, or the area that is our shared community, than a place where we can go and just sit and think about the sacrifices that those families made. To me, it's just beautiful. And I look forward to dialoguing with all of you, but I want you to know that's where my brain is. And I hope that we can have dialogues about this moving forward. Secondly, and lastly, Ward 2 traffic issues. It's really, really exciting to hear Town Manager Lestitian talk about funding the community safety coordinator that's going to assist in our walk, bike, and drive initiative as a town. But like Ward 2, I know Riverdale Park in general sits between Baltimore Avenue and Kenilworth, but I feel like we get a blunt of that in Ward 2 on Lafayette, Queensbury, Riverdale Road. I have 5 to 7 constituents that frequently reach out to me, including my wife walking our son, who talk about issues that they've encountered on those roadways. And pedestrian safety has to be a number one motive of this town government moving forward. I have a constituent on this call that I assume will eventually speak to this. I think, Caitlin, there's opportunity for public movement moving forward after this. But we have children that are at risk. We have an elementary school. We have town government employees that face. I myself, on multiple occasions, I've encountered one driving through 48th and Queensbury. I had a car run a stop sign that would have resulted in serious bodily injury in myself at 6 o'clock in the morning. I have, as a pedestrian, I was literally walking to a community walk right in front of town hall in Riverdale Elementary School, and I had somebody pull up and start to rev their engine and threaten me. And that was just a remarkable happenstance because I was like 250 feet away from Riverdale Park Police. I love the dialogue. What I'm gonna love more is when we put speed bumps in and signs and pedestrian safety signage and walkways. I just want to start to see some of the tangible impact of what it is that we're talking about doing, because I don't want to be in one of those situations where we retroactively have to talk about an accident before we actually can accomplish some things. So I look forward to these dialogues, and I look forward to these dialogues occurring sooner rather than later. And with that, and with the national championship game in mind, Mr. Smith, I apologize. I will be brief the rest of the meeting. I will yield my time. Thank you.
I think I've talked the most, so I can't complain.
Thank you, Councilmember Foe. I've been communicating with Ms. Harwood in the chat, and she will hold her comments to the public comment section, which should be fairly soon. Councilmember Lingua, Ward 3.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Tomorrow evening will be the CCAR CDC board meeting, starting at 6:30 p.m. going to approximately about 8:30 p.m. Number of items that are going to be covered that are on the agenda. President Nola, Dennis Nola, will be giving an activity report, a board governance presentation of CCAR in 2022, concerning the objectives of board governance and fund development. Vice President Alice Bishop will be giving an activity report on standards of excellence and where that is. Aisha Henderson from AmeriCorps Vistas will be making a presentation discussing about the remaining items which are required for the board for submission for the Standards for Excellence application for a basic designation. That's something that Ms. Bishop, Jan Townsend, and Sharon Wertz have been working on. Secretary Sharon Wertz will be presenting minutes, and Treasurer Thomas Wertz Jr. will be giving a fund report. Executive Director Pat Parker will be talking about a number of things. One of them, she will be announcing formally the moving on of Imari Alvarez, who is the Business Development Manager for CCAR CDC. Ms. Alvarez has found a new post, which is a little closer to her home in Baltimore. And I hope that the council, as well as the CDC, will wish her well. Ms. Parker will also be talking about the Better Blocks placemaking program for the site, it's for the Kenilworth corridor, specifically the area between Kenilworth Avenue and Riverdale Road. And this will be in conjunction with MNC PPC and the organization Better Blocks from Texas. Ms. Parker will be giving also a presentation for more information regarding the annual health fair that Mr. Listician mentioned earlier. Also about the soccer program that they have going on over break, starting on April 16th. And as well as how she looks to go about filling the position of the business development manager, as well as an operations assistant. There will also be a discussion on the Sarvis Empowerment Cafe, the capital campaign tile program. Staff has prepared additional information for the board to have outreach to donor prospects. There's going to be a number of ideas talked about in terms of how to recognize donors, especially those who make substantial donations. The new window and door logos there at the Sarvis Empowerment Cafe have been installed, as well as all but 2 tables and chairs in the customer area. They're waiting for those to go in, the remaining 2 to go in. The cafe's patio porch, which has had the decking renovated and treated, as well as adding concrete supports and a new canopy frame with a cover. And they're just waiting on installation of a valance, ceiling fans, lights, and granite tabletops. The CDC is also waiting on a third-party electrical inspection, which would cover the availability of hot water. And thereafter, the CDC would be able to request a pre-health department inspection. They're interviewing for new positions, that being the main chef, utility worker, and pastry cook, which would be part-time. In terms of grants for Sarvis, there's been a grant submission to the town, as they had put out an RFP, and they're going to be requesting $50,000 for training for those residents from the town of Riverdale Park that cannot afford the cost of training. They'll also be looking at a unsolicited grant submission for LISC. It's an intermediary for the U.S. Department of Housing and Community Development capacity building program. The interview was completed for a $35,000 grant for Sarvis operations. They're also looking towards a grant from an RFP was put forward to MGM for workforce training for an amount of $20,000. In other grant programs, there has been a Department of Housing and Community Development grant award for business and restaurant support in the amount of $169,000. And that is if it's approved by the county council. There's also a community Chesapeake Bay Trust 2022 grant application, which has been awarded. The title of that is Filling in the Gaps, Replenishing Our Precious Canopy. And this is an award amount of $99,990, which is including workshops, which will also include workshops at the Empowerment Cafe. As part of the Chesapeake Bay Trust Urban Tree Program, there is a request at $200,000 that the CDC is making to be able to plant 300 trees in residential and sidewalk tree spaces. While that could include Riverdale Park, that's also for the greater Riverdale area that the CDC also covers. There have been 2 grant submissions by Route 1 Community Cares to continue the restaurant meals program to deal with food insecurity in the amount of $100,000. CCAR CDC is the fiscal agent for Route 1 Community Cares, and they do collect a fee on this in the amount of $5,000 and $10,000. Regarding new business, there will be a discussion of the schedule for the board for development training. They'll be looking for having decisions by May of 2022 for that schedule. They'll be looking at board roles and responsibilities training with Carwin Macklin. Also, they're looking actually around June 2022 as opposed to May. And the board is going to be revisiting the responsibility of its responsibility for board recruitment and board composition and addressing some of the gaps in the board. And that's something that they'll be looking in July of 2022. In September and October is when the board governance and board recruitment will be taking on its next phase. And they'll be looking for an election of officers in December of 2022. that concludes the what will be covered tomorrow evening at the CCAR CDC meeting. If anyone does have any questions, you're more than welcome to reach me, or if you'd like to contact any of the board members to ask some questions, I would suggest going to the website for their email address information. That website is ccarcdc.org. And with that, I will conclude my award report.
Thank you, Councilmember Lingua. Moving on, Councilmember Sadiq, Ward 4.
Nothing to report.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Mejia, Ward 5.
Sorry, I have nothing to report.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Mayers is absent, so we are through the committee, council committee and ward reports. That brings us to public comments. Ms. Harwood raised her hand earlier wishing to make a comment, so please feel free to speak, Ms. Harwood.
Thank you so much. It sounds like we've got a lot of discussion that's already really promising, that's making my job a lot easier. It sounds like you all know and are very aware of the safety issues that I wanted to talk about, that I brought to Councilman Fo's attention. But I did want to reiterate it because it's something that is on our mind every single day. Walking through the neighborhood, pushing our daughter in her stroller, walking my dog. I've lived down the street from Councilman Fo since 2017. I'm over on Rittenhouse, just behind the fire station. So, you know, I've got East-West Highway to one side, as he said, the other two busy highways on the other side as well. And there is just an insane amount of speeding going on and a lack of total disregard for stop signs. A few years ago, my dog and I were tapped, but we were hit by a car in front of the Riversdale mansion coming out. And just, I think it was 2 weeks ago, my husband, my daughter and I were walking her over to her daycare around 10 in the morning. And we saw a guy come speeding, going somewhere between 40 and 50 miles an hour through a stop sign. We waved our hands up like this, letting him know that we were not happy with what he was doing. And he proceeded to threaten us with death threats. So I just think that it's getting really bad. It's always been bad, but there's an attitude by a lot of the drivers that they just cannot be bothered to stop for pedestrians, that this is not their job. And it's just really scary, this attitude of we're just not going to do it. So it's really encouraging to hear that there's going to be like a safety committee that perhaps I'd be really excited to get involved and have members of the community involved. So to hear that from the town manager, please reach out to me if you'd like a member of the community to be involved in any way as well. But I think you put in the chat, there's $100,000 proposed in the budget for, you know, stop signs, crosswalk signs, radar speed signs, which are all really great. But I really want to advocate for a couple of things here, which is speed on acting on this, because I just think this is going to just end in tragedy sooner rather than later. And then 2, advocate for speed bumps, because I just really think that until people are physically stopped in some way and their cars are, you know, damaged if they're going 15 miles an hour over a speed bump, that's the only way it's going to stop them. I just don't see that people care enough, unfortunately. There's an attitude that's going to take years to change. And that's what the Safety Council is for as well, is teaching people that they must stop for pedestrians. This is part of the law and it's very serious. It's going to take years. But until then, we need to have physical barriers to stop people. I've seen kids almost get run over multiple times in front of that elementary school. So Taylor Road is a really bad spot. Right in front of the mansion is a really bad spot. I mean, I could go on and on. But of course, we see that there are speed bumps on some roads. On a little further up on Rittenhouse, there's some speed bumps. And then over on Oliver Street, there's speed bumps too. So I know it's possible. I know it's going to take some time, but I just want to urge you all to really think about this. Think about what's happened in DC. There have been kids run over in crosswalks and killed. So I don't want that to happen here. So thank you for hearing me today.
Thank you, Ms. Harwood. Just as a comment, I've been discussing this with Councilmember Fo, and well, actually, I've been discussing this with our legislators for a few years and wanting to be able to extend our automated enforcement programs to include stop sign cameras. So if somebody goes through a stop sign at a sizable speed, that they'll get an automated ticket. And apparently such a bill was introduced this year. It didn't make it through, but it encourages me that that's out there. And there are other ways to encourage just traffic to slow down. And I look forward to our new safety officer being able to help us with that. Ms. Katz.
Thank you, Mayor. I just definitely want to show my appreciation for the informative meeting tonight, from the budget presentation, which absolutely is by leaps and bounds getting better every year. And this was really a great presentation. To our ward reports, I appreciate everything that was said by Ward 1 council member and Ward 2 and Ward 3, et cetera, and you, Mayor. But I just do want to express my concern tonight for the public safety report that was in Town Manager Listition's most recent status and information report, and my concern just for the level of severity of some of those incidents, which it just jumped out at me, like in a way that I usually, when I do read the report and read the public safety portion, I don't know, all I could see were guns and knives and assaults all around me, location wise. And it was just of concern that level of crime is still going on right now. And I just wanted to express my concern. I really don't have anything else other to say about it. In addition to this pedestrian safety issue, my concern is really more for some of that, those other crimes that are going on as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Katz. I watch those statistics very carefully. I actually, I have not the last few weeks, but I generally load up the real-time maps where you can see where crimes have occurred and filter on what types of crimes we have those statistics uploaded by the police department. And it's discouraging, and I honestly feel that we've seen an increase in overall lawlessness, disregard for the law during the entire pandemic, increasing over time. And you see that from all the way from jaywalking to speeding. We see that in our speed camera revenues to the much more serious crimes that you're talking about. And of course, I think everyone is discussing the vast increase we've seen in domestic violence during the pandemic. And I wish I had a simple and fast solution, but I don't. But we are watching it and we are trying to address it. Any additional public comments? Okay, we've gotten to the agenda items section. We've gotten to the consent agenda. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda items?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Foe, seconded by Councilmember Smith. There's no discussion of these items. So I'll go immediately to a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Foe.
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua.
Aye.
Councilmember Siddiq.
Aye.
Councilmember Mejia.
Aye.
And I abstain. The motion passes 5-0-1. On to legislative action items. Item number 1, motion to authorize the town manager to enter an agreement with Sewing Empowerment and Economic Development, Inc., SEED, for an amount not to exceed $76,000 through June 30, 2022, to administer the Emergency Housing Assistance Program. I presume there's a town staff presentation on this before we get to a motion. Is that correct?
There is. Good evening, Mayor and Council and members of the public. We've talked a little bit about the housing assistance program in the past, but as a reminder, the Mayor and Council established the housing assistance program to help residents with their late mortgage, rental, and utility payments. In order to assist residents as quickly as possible, as this is a time-sensitive matter, the town has researched partners to assist with this, and SEED has actually assisted the county with their emergency rental assistance program. And they have familiarity with the requirements from ARPA spending guidelines as well. And so seeing as they are helping residents frequently, we thought that they would be good partners for this program as well. The agreement would be to assist the town with the housing assistance program, administering $380,000 in total for rental, mortgage, and utility assistance. Staff has conducted research to see how extensive the late mortgage, rental, and utility situation is currently, and we believe that $380,000 is a justifiable amount, given the circumstances that we were hearing from property managers in apartment buildings. $350,000 of this will be funded directly through the American Rescue Plan Act funds, or our emergency or economic recovery strategy fund, while $30,000 will be derived from the Economic Development Fund. We've split this in this way because there are a number of residents in town who would not be able to qualify for federal program dollars, and we want to make sure that we are able to serve all of our residents. Yes, so SEED's agreement would be to provide the administration of this program for a 20% administration fee. 20% of the $380,000 total yields the $76,000, which is why the agreement is not to exceed $76,000. I know that SEED is eager to get the program started and start administering the program as quickly as possible. But if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Director Cheltenham. Are there questions for Director Cheltenham about this program? So I had a conversation with some representatives of some Ward 5 residents on Friday, and there was a request that the split between documented and undocumented be looked at by the council. And I had some discussions with the town manager since then, also some others. And this was actually partly informed by a conversation or a presentation at the Mayor's Association meeting last week about ARPA funds. That the current rules from Treasury about spending ARPA money, this is a bit of a surprise that came out earlier this year, is that for amounts less than $10 million, which is our entire amount, that we can report that we are spending it as lost revenue, and we can spend it on any governmental purpose. And if that stands, if that is the recognized and final rule, then we could conceivably adjust that barrier between the $350,000 for documented residents and $30,000 for undocumented. But there's concern that that ruling, that the $10 million could be used for any governmental purpose, will be challenged and perhaps struck down in the courts, in which case we would want to be working under the previous set of rules, which are a bit more, to say the least, a bit more restrictive. So those are just two things I wanted to bring up for council discussion if council wishes to further adjust this program. Any thoughts from the council?
Mr. Mayor?
Please speak.
I would just say I'm in favor of anything that encourages equity and eliminates any disparities between our residents, undocumented and otherwise. No matter who people are, where they come from, they are our neighbors, they're part of this community, and they deserve our assistance when they need it.
Okay. Town staff wish to say anything about this split, this funding model? We're a little bit outside of the topic at hand, but if we enter into this agreement saying that they'll spend the money this way, then they're going to spend it that way.
So, and Mr. Mayor, I apologize. I had to take a family call for a moment, so I missed part of your comment, but I believe it was addressing the final rule versus the previous rule and how we were using some funds, local dollars, general fund dollars, to ensure that those who do not comply with federal standards could still benefit. From a staff perspective, I think this as an initial split is appropriate. And Mr. Shelton, correct me if I'm wrong, but we have additional funds in the Economic Development Fund where if they had additional applicants that could not receive federal dollars, we would be able to draw upon other funds in the Economic Development Fund, which are general fund dollars. So, and if we had to, if we did not have a sufficient amount there, then we could bring that back to the council for some sort of a budget modification.
Okay, so we should expect to get regular reports on the spending, and we can track this and change it if needed at that time.
Yes, I think we have sufficient flexibility where if they have more applicants in need that don't qualify for the federal dollars, we'd report that back to you and make adjustments.
Okay, very good. Councilmember Lingua, see your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Do we know that if SEED has that capacity to essentially pursue a program like we're contemplating?
Yes, they have administered a program, a very similar program for the county, the Emergency Rental Assistance Program for the county, which again followed the American Rescue Plan Act guidelines. So they should be very familiar.
Okay, and it would be able to deal with documented and undocumented applicants.
Yes, that would just require them to loosen their restrictions there on the qualified applicants.
Okay. Thank you.
Town Manager Listitian and I discussed this, and he said that that SEED already has processes in place, and so they should be able to move very quickly on implementing this program.
Yes, I actually received a text message from Laverne Peaks, our ARPA manager, saying that they would be able to provide the funds to recipients as early as a little over a week after signing this agreement. So we should be able to get this up and running pretty quickly.
It's fantastic. Okay, is there additional council questions or comments? Are there any public questions or comments? Okay, I will do a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, we don't have a motion. Thank you. May I have a motion, please?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion
Oh, sorry.
to authorize the town manager to enter into an agreement with Sowing Empowerment for and Economic Development Incorporated to administer the town's emergency housing assistance program for an administrative amount not to exceed $76,000 through June 30, 2022.
Seconded.
Motion by Councilmember Lingua, seconded by Councilmember Foe. Is there any further discussion? Are there any public comments? Now I'll do the roll call vote. Thank you, Councilmember Lingua, for catching me. Councilmember Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Foe,
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua,
Aye.
Councilmember Sadiq,
Aye.
Councilmember Mejia,
Aye.
and I abstain. The motion passes 501. Next item on the agenda, and this time I'll just ask for the motion up front. Motion to authorize the town manager to send a letter of support to MNC PPC regarding administrative review of the proposed changes to Discovery District lots 15 through 17.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Foe, seconded by Councilmember Smith. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Wasn't watching the little green rectangles light up that time. Is there discussion of this motion, or can we have a staff presentation on this motion? Just to remind us where we are.
It's good evening again. Unless you were going to speak, town manager. Okay. Good evening again.
I was going to defer to you, sir.
Okay. Good evening again, Mayor and Council. Yes. Sorry, let me turn this off. There is a presentation made by COPT recently to address their change in plans for their 2 additional office spaces on River Road. Their current office space on River Road, 4600 River Road, is an office space, but they also have 2 additional spaces. I believe it's 44 and 4500. And during their presentation, they shared with us the changes that they planned on making between their original plan and their amended plan, which would involve reorienting the buildings and also adding space or stories to the parking garage here. So the new buildings would be approximately the same size. They would change from 150,000 square feet to 140 and 160. So in total, it would be the same amount. But then they would have a shorter sides facing River Road. And again, with that additional space in the parking garage. This is the 4600 River Road that I had mentioned earlier, the new home of Cybrary. Yes, so this is the amended plans for the COP development, and they have requested the mayor and council provide a letter of support to Park and Planning regarding their administrative review to their changes. If there are any other questions about the changes or the presentation, I'd be happy to answer them.
I'll just add in that we saw the presentation at the, I believe at the March legislative meeting, given the February work session. And the question at that time was whether College Park had weighed in. College Park did weigh in on this proposal and provide a letter of support without requesting any changes from the developer. Any council questions or comments? I'll just comment that I hope that the county requires them to meet all of the stormwater management. That sure is a lot of parking on their space. It's like every spare inch of that entire lot has parking on it. So it should be high grade parking and keep water on site. Are there sort of no public comments, no council comments? I'll take it to a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Foe.
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua.
No.
Councilmember Sadiq.
Aye.
Councilmember Mejia.
Aye.
And I abstain. The motion passes 4-1-1. Next item on the agenda, I think we might need to discuss this and may not actually be a motion, is regarding the Maryland Department of Agriculture Mosquito Control Program and the town of Riverdale Park participation in said program. Does staff have a presentation to review? Or amendment to review?
It's really not a presentation, Mr. Mayor. We don't have much to add. except for we did make an inquiry following the last council discussion. That's included in this memorandum. And in the italicized portion, staff reached out and got a reply referenced the Asian tiger mosquitoes, and whether or not the program works well against the Asian tiger mosquitoes. Mr. Chelton, can you pull the memo up so the whole italicized portion is showing? Thank you. And so the recommendation that back is basically homeowners should make or should make efforts to make sure that their property, their neighbor's property, are treated. This will take care of most of them. Unfortunately, they have some cryptic habitats like gutters and those plastic gutter extenders. Sometimes the extenders are buried. In that case, there's a lot of companies that spray residual pesticides on bushes and that, which kill mosquitoes. And so there's advice there that we received from the state staff member. And then he talks about the gravity traps. So tonight we're looking for direction from the council, and that may be that we have to find more information. I know there was a question about whether or not the spraying is effective against other types of mosquitoes other than the Asian tiger mosquitoes, and we do not have a response on that this evening.
So I actually did receive a response from Mr. Prendergast on that just today, late in the day today. And he stated that in the state of Maryland, there are approximately 65 species that they target with this program. He thinks that only perhaps 15 of them are here, and that most of those would only occur immediately after at least decent sized flooding event, that they tend to breed in the waters that are left after a flood, and you have an infestation at that time. But that those are targeted, and he seemed to think that those were probably a decent fraction of the, he implied that these are a decent fraction of the bites that people might be getting in their yards, and pointed out that, again, as he stated in his presentation, that they only spray if they're getting a lot of mosquitoes in their traps. So it's still not clear to me. I still have a few follow-up questions, and unless someone is very interested in moving forward tonight, I might suggest that we should delay this discussion into the budget cycle, since we can decide, since the next due date is May 6th, we can discuss this under the budget and make a decision about whether to participate or not before then. But if people are ready to vote, then we can also vote. So I will quit talking and let other members of council speak up at this time, if anyone wants to. Councilmember Lingua.
Thank you. I was looking for the little hand raiser guy and I'm hitting the chat button instead. Fat fingers. What are you going to do? Yeah, I'm the same way. I'm really not sure which way to go on this. And being that, really our deadline to be able to have a letter to where it needs to be is May 6th. To me, I think really kind of we have some time that we can talk about this some more. Really, I think probably, last chance we'd really have would be if we had a special legislative, well, the latest date would be the 26th of this month. Or no, pardon me, that would be the 25th of this month, 3 weeks from today. Also, we could squeeze this, if we decide earlier, we could also squeeze this in at one of the budget hearings too. And just schedule a special legislative at that point, if we think we are. I can see both sides of this, and I'm just wondering what's going to be the best way to go on this. If a lot of our problem is dealing with the Asian tiger mosquito, and this is really not going to affect it, and really what we're looking at doing is more of a on the ground campaign, then really it's a matter of just trying to determine how we approach that and how we can make that approach effective. And do we have enough of a time frame to do that? At the other hand, the Asian tiger mosquito isn't the only mosquito in the area.
Mhm.
So that's kind of where I'm at on this. So I'd like to hear what other folks have to say.
Councilmember Siddiq, I see your hand is up.
Mosquitoes are terrible. We should kill as many of them as possible.
Thank you, Councilmember Siddiq. Councilmember Foe.
I can't beat that. That is, I feel like both council members have just truly expressed how I feel. I understand complaints about this. I understand. I've seen the Asian tiger mosquito sting me hundreds and hundreds of times. And I know what it's like to live here in August and September. It's miserable. So I'm hesitant to say no. At the same point, I recognize that, predominantly I'm getting stung by Asian tiger mosquitoes. I like the idea of thinking about this a little bit more. If we are not constricted by time, I would like to, reach out to other constituents, talk to my wife. I listened to the presentation and I 100% support spraying to kill mosquitoes, because I hate not being able to be outside in my property. Simultaneously, I could use more education as well. So that's where I am. So I am supportive right now, waiting until May legislative, if it's possible to make a decision on this.
And we can continue discussing in the meantime. I have to say that I'm interested to know about what they are trapping, and whether they have statistics on that in our area. I know they have traps in town, and whether they are actually identifying what varieties are in there, and we could get access to that information. Councilmember Foe, you still have your hand up. I assume that's just left. Any other council comments before we move to public comments? Okay, any public comments? Ms. Katz, please speak.
Mayor, I just didn't want to let you down since I'm in the meeting. And
I was waiting for
Ms.
your hand
Katz
to
say
go up.
anything? I appreciate the perspectives with Councilmember Siddiq and Councilmember Foe. And I likewise, I'm not in a particular, I would like to make the town to make a data-based decision. So I would be very interested to know about the other species or other types of mosquitoes that we have before we decide that this is the only way to get rid of them, because I'm eaten alive in my yard too. But if it's Asian tiger mosquitoes and the spraying is not going to really impact that, because I don't think it has in the past, I still get eaten, and we've been in the program up to this point. So I don't want to spray just to say that we're in the spraying program, especially if there's a lot of other more effective kind of biocontrols that we can do, that we can use. Gat traps being one. Ship in a bunch of frogs would be another. But I appreciate, there is a sustainability committee meeting next Wednesday, so this is definitely on the agenda, and hopefully I will also send out an email to those green team folks and try to encourage them that this is a topic. If they want to speak on it, it would be a great meeting to come to. So Mayor, I hope that's helpful to you and the rest of the.
Definitely.
And that was it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so if we don't want to make a decision tonight, which sounds like we're leaning in that direction, then we can just move on to the next item and no one makes a motion, then we don't have to do anything. See a thumbs up. So let's move on. Next item is introduction of ordinance 2022-OR-02 regarding ethics ordinance revisions, financial disclosure. This is just an introduction, and then we will move on from this. Would someone like to introduce it? A lot of mics have gone
For a
long.
motion, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, I'm looking for an introduction. Say, I would like to introduce ordinance 2022-OR-02.
I'd like to introduce the proposed ordinance. Do I need to say the number?
No, that's good enough.
I can find the window with the agenda in it here if you need me to.
Yeah, I was looking up the legislation and the screen moved up too fast, so I couldn't introduce.
Director Shelton, can you put it on the actual ordinance, because that'll have the information what it's for. Yes. And
Mr. Mayor,
yes.
sorry, just going to say, I'd like to introduce ordinance 2022-OR-02.
Okay, and I'll just read the reason for introducing it into the record. For the purpose of amending financial disclosure provisions of the town's ethics ordinance for certain town employees and appointed officials, authorizing the town ethics commission to require certain employees and appointed officials to file annually comprehensive disclosures, correcting certain terminology, and generally related to financial disclosure requirements for certain town employees and appointed officials. So that is now introduced and summary produced, and we can move on the agenda. Next item on the agenda is unfinished business. Are there any items of unfinished business? Hear a lot of silence, so I'll move on to new business. There are two specific items under new business. One of them is a motion to adopt resolution 2022-R-08 regarding reappointment of Ethics Commission members. Would someone like to make such a motion?
So moved.
Is there a
Second.
I heard 1 and 3 on the second.
Looking at it.
Councilmember Fo made the motion, seconded by Councilmember Lingua. Would you like to discuss it, Councilmember Fo?
This is a resolution concerning Ethics Commission, the appointment of members for the purpose of appointing or reappointing members to the Riverdale Park Ethics Commission for certain terms of office and generally relating to the membership of Town Ethics Commission. Personally, the members that we've had in the past have been remarkable. We are, as a town, committed to open and ethical government, and I support this motion passing forward.
Thank you, Councilmember. Is there additional council discussion of this resolution? Are there public comments on this resolution? I'd like to thank Chair Huberty for being in attendance and for her service over many years on the commission. Thank you. If there's no additional discussion, I will perform a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Fo.
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua.
Aye.
Councilmember Sadiq.
Aye.
Councilmember Mejia.
Aye.
And I abstain. The motion passes 5-0-1. Thank you. Next one is going to require a little bit of discussion. I know that it's 9:36, but hopefully we can get through it quickly. This is a little bit complicated, so I'm going to let town staff take over the discussion of it.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. So myself and Director Lewis will review this with you all. Purchasing vehicles right now is kind of tough. Even when we were looking for leased vehicles, when we were acquiring police vehicles, it's been running about a year behind to actually acquire vehicles. And Director Lewis has been attempting to locate a pickup truck that is in the budget. And so we have a process in place whereby we identify a vehicle that meets the specifications that has been approved in the budget, and that meets obviously that meets the town's needs. And then the standard process is that we then come back to the council and we say we can get this vehicle for this amount of money, and we go through our standard process for approval of that, presuming the vehicle is more than $20,000. And in every case, the vehicles typically are more than $20,000. So only to find that when we try to line something up, dealers are not, they either don't have any vehicles, or the vehicles they have are moving quickly. And so we've worked with Town Attorney Fred Sussman to meet the charter requirements, but to create a situation where town staff can act quickly if we find a vehicle that is within the budgeted amount and within the specifications that would be attached to a resolution. And so the resolution that you have in front of you, Mr. Cheltenham, can you, yes, if you can move it down a little bit further, thank you. And so there's an explanatory statement first that basically addresses competitive bidding and the $20,000 ceiling for my authority, or whoever's in my chair's authority, to make acquisitions without needing specific approval. So, Mr. Cheltenham, if you go down to section 1, please. And so it says, be it resolved, the council, the town of Riverdale Park, as authorized in section 623 of the charter, suspends the requirements for competitive bidding for the acquisition of town vehicles for the remainder of this fiscal year, so ending June 30, and authorizes the town manager to effectuate the acquisition of such vehicles under the following 3 conditions. Condition 1, vehicles meet the make, model, and other material specifications of one or more of the vehicles set forth on the vehicle specification listing attached to the resolution as Exhibit 1 and incorporated herein as reference. The second condition is that the cumulative cost of all vehicles purchased under this authorization shall not exceed the amount appropriated and available for vehicle acquisition in the approved CIP expenditure accounts, and that the acquisition cost for any one vehicle, in this case, shall not exceed $68,000, which that is the budgeted amount. So what we'd be looking for is the council to approve such a resolution. We understand finding balance between oversight and being able to affect operations. And that's why we're proposing that we do this in for a short period of time. And then if the same conditions exist as we enter the next fiscal year, that we would seek another resolution for the vehicles that we would be trying to purchase in the next fiscal year. And we'd be asking for a finite period of time. And with that, Mr. Council, or Mr. Mayor and Council, I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Town Manager. I believe that Councilmember Foe had his hand up first. If so, speak. If not, please point out my mistake.
Yeah, I'm sorry. My wife just spoke to me in the background and confused me. This council or this staff has acted exemplary and worked in an exemplary fashion during the pandemic. I view this as pandemic spending or a pandemic marketplace that's driven by our current economic conditions, and I have no problems granting this authority on a limited basis. That's where I stand.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Sadiq.
Sounds like a good idea. Can you explain again the purpose of bullet 3? The acquisition cost for any one vehicle should not exceed $68,000.
Yes, and so in this case, the vehicle that's budgeted, because we're only talking about buying one, so we put in the budgeted amount. But this resolution is to serve as a template. So if we were purchasing multiple vehicles, we would put in the price of the highest vehicle there. And the thought is that whoever is on your staff team, they would not be stepping into a situation where they're purchasing a luxury type vehicle. So it's just to have additional constraints on staff.
But if we had it in the budget at 68K, what does it matter?
And if it's one vehicle, yes. But for example, in next year's budget, we don't call out individual vehicles in the proposed budget. So there may be a line item that says purchase DPW trucks. And it may say 3, and there may be a number 375,000. This would be to identify the highest priced vehicle that we're purchasing at any one time. And staff's fine if number 3 goes away.
So, this makes a lot of sense, I think, for smaller pickup trucks. But if you're talking about a trash truck or a fire truck, that may be significantly more than $68,000 and yet still be budgeted for.
Oh, well, and that 68,000 is specific to the vehicle we're trying to buy now.
Can you scroll to the appendix, please? So this exhibit 1 is part of this resolution, and this is the only vehicle that is affected by this resolution, and it's the half-ton pickup truck. And if we wanted to do this in a future budget year, then we would have a new resolution in that time to set up a similar program, and the language of bullet 3 in that case would change.
Yes, the 68,000, if we were buying a trash truck, may read 200,000.
Or it could be, reframed to say the price limits that are specified under the vehicle specifications listing. It could be changed to something else like that. With the price in the exhibits. Does that answer your questions, Councilmember Sadiq?
And my second question was that $20,000 limit. Should that have been indexed to inflation, considering every year $20,000 means less and less?
I'm really interested to know whether we can legally do that or not. I think we would have to specify which inflation. I mean, we've been learning from national news that there's lots of different indices of inflation, and there's some things that are more volatile and some that are less. But that's not the topic at hand right now. I would love to discuss this with you offline and with staff offline to see if we should and can do that. It's a great idea. I've thought that lots of things should be indexed to inflation. Councilmember Smith is showing up as being above Councilmember Lingua. Is that the order in which you raised your hands, I hope? So I'll
Lingua was first.
Councilmember Smith, please speak.
No, I was saying, I think Councilmember Lingo was first, actually.
Oh, Councilmember Lingua, please speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So essentially what you're saying is line item 3 was essentially put into this, being this is a relatively new approach, and it's something of a pioneering resolution. It was put in for matters of precedent for future resolutions, correct?
Yes, it's established as a template resolution, sir.
Okay. That was the main point. I know you didn't want to talk about it, but to chip in, I think when you start getting into pegging things to indices, it starts getting too clever by a half. I think this is just something each start of each council session after an election, that this is something that's reviewed and decided whether or not to raise that limit to a higher amount.
Okay. The amount, for those who are not on the council, the $20,000 amount was a bit controversial. There were some council members who were not happy with that. But that's just for history. Councilmember Smith, please speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What, Mr. Lestitian or whoever on the staff can answer, what is the life cycle of these vehicles?
Of this particular pickup truck, that I don't know. I will say that we have some vehicles that are, I guess the oldest truck we have is 21 years old. And the newest we have is probably 6 years old. Yes, sir.
Is this intended to replace that 21-year-old truck?
No, this is intended to be an additional pickup truck, and we would not be selling a vehicle off. We have, since the beginning of the pandemic, we've instituted a rule whenever possible across the board, but in public works, it's always possible, one person, one vehicle. But sometimes that means driving a big truck when you could be driving a small truck, if we had one. And so we'd be adding a truck here, and then the one person, one vehicle rule has exceptions for police transport and police field training. But otherwise, we keep one person, one vehicle.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Lestitian. I just want to pose something for, I don't want to just say discussion to obligate other people to have an opinion on it, but I don't want to hold this up because I know the staff needs all the resources they can get in this time. But I'm thinking that like you say the oldest truck we have in the fleet is 21 years. Fleet vehicles that are electric are just coming onto the market, including vehicles that meet all of these specifications with the exception of gas or diesel, of course. And I'm wondering if like maybe this is a blessing in disguise if we're locking ourselves into 21 years with a gas powered vehicle in the fleet, when if we waited 6 months or a year, that the town might be able to acquire an electric vehicle that meets the specifications other than the fuel. So that's just a thought. I don't want to hold it up if folks and if staff believe that, it's priority to get this now. I understand, certainly support that. But just want to put that in the proverbial room here.
And Mr. Mayor, can I respond?
Please do.
So we do need to acquire this. Actually, we attempted to acquire it last year, and here we are a year and a half later, and we still don't have it. In terms of purchasing electric vehicles and that, when we review the CIP budget, you'll see that there's a CIP project for the installation of electric vehicle charging stations, as well as several electric pickup trucks. We also have a need for replacing our dump trucks, for which the ones that we need, we're unaware of any electrical vehicles that will be available in the short term. And the DPW fleet vehicles are in pretty rough shape. And so we are recommending in the proposed budget replacing quite a few of the fleet.
That sounds great. Thanks for that information, Mr. Lestitian. I'm glad that you and the staff, as always, are looking out for a sustainable future for us here in the town. Just know that if those electric pickup trucks are delivered to the town before I get mine, I'm going to be at least jealous and send you some angry texts about it.
I look forward to those, sir.
Are there any additional council comments or questions? Councilmember, so your Smith is still, hand is still up. Additional council comments? So just out of curiosity, if you happen to find a half-ton pickup truck that was electric, would you feel that that the vehicle specification listing precluded you from purchasing it, and it fit within the budget? I know this is impossible, but
I would say this, sir. I spoke earlier tonight about the council's vision and commitment statements. And so we first would look to secure an electric, but we have looked at that and haven't found one, and at least not one on a lot someplace where we can buy one. And so when we put it in the scales of balance, that's why we're saying that we would need to go diesel. But we're certainly open to purchasing an electric one if we can locate one, and we may be able to locate one if we're not having to go through a competitive bid process. To date, we've been restricted of looking for contracts that we can ride. If that's waived, then our options are much greater.
understood. And that actually came up in my discussions with legislators, that apparently the state doesn't have on their listing their vehicle fleets a lot of electric vehicles, and so it's difficult to buy them at this time and ride to state contracts. Councilmember Smith, your hand is up again.
Yes, can I make or offer an amendment?
Well, as soon as it's introduced, but it's a lot
Okay.
easier to amend before it's introduced and then introduce it. Would you like to do that?
Yeah, Mr. Since as we've talked about this being potentially a template resolution for the future, I would just I think we could solve this topic a little bit by amending the fourth bullet, diesel/gas, to include /electric.
And also hybrid.
Sure. And I know those things from personal research are not going to be available in the term that we're talking about here. Love it if they were, but again, in the interest of the template.
Sure. I mean, I think that giving the staff, the flexibility to do the right thing is good. So why don't we amend the draft and to include those two of electric and hybrid. And then would someone like to make a motion to adopt resolution 2022-R-09?
Mr. Mayor, if I may,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt resolution 2022-R-09, a resolution concerning acquisition of vehicles and suspension of competitive bidding.
With the amendment that Exhibit 1, Bullet 4 include electric and hybrid as options?
Sir, that was already added before this motion was made, so it's just part of the current text.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Is there a second?
Seconded.
Thank you, Councilmember Foe. Motion by Councilmember Lingua, seconded by Councilmember Foe. Is there further discussion from the council? Are there public comments? Okay, I will do a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Foe,
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua,
Aye.
Councilmember Sadiq.
Aye.
Councilmember Mejia texted me that she had to leave. And so she is no longer around. Councilmember Mayers is not. We have 4 affirmative votes. This is a competitive or a financial issue, but just for good luck, I'm going to throw my vote in and vote for it. And so it passes 5-0. That brings us to the end of the explicit new business items. I'm going to bring something up just as an idea, and I don't think we necessarily need to discuss it now, just something to bring up to staff. Something that's changed very recently in the COVID world is that testing, which used to be free for those who did not have insurance, COVID testing, particularly the PCR tests, high-grade tests, for free, they now may cost as much as $125. And I think it might be worthwhile to investigate whether we spend some of our ARPA funds picking up that cost for residents who believe they may be infected and are unable to afford a test. So just bringing that up as an idea.
And Mr. Mayor, can I comment?
Please.
I don't know, I don't recall the dollar amount, but there is a line item in the section 20 of the proposed budget, ARPA, for purchasing testing. And we can report that back to you all by email in advance of Saturday's meeting.
Okay, thank you. Any additional items of new business? May I have a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Mayor,
Oh,
I'm sorry to interrupt. You had mentioned earlier in the meeting about a potential
thank you.
additional.
Thank you. I lost my notes. As I said, Councilmember Mayers was unable to make this meeting because she was ill. She was not at the work session. I don't recall whether she was at the State of the Town, but those are all 3 required meetings. So I would appreciate a motion to excuse the absence this evening of Councilmember Mayers.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to motion to excuse Councilmember Mayer's absences, just absence this evening, correct? Is that what you were asking for? Absence this evening. I know through personal dialogue that she has been struggling for quite a while, and I would just like to be here to support her in that.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Foe, seconded by Councilmember Smith. Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor, if I may,
Please.
I'd like to amend the motion to include the dates of, I believe it was March, it was March 14th was the state of the town. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
As well as March 28th, which is
Okay.
the date
Yes.
of the work session.
Thank you. Councilmember Foe, do you accept that as a friendly amendment?
It's accepted as a friendly, yes.
And Councilmember Smith also?
Yes.
Very good. We're back to discussion. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Foe,
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua,
Aye.
Councilmember Sadiq,
Aye.
and I abstain. The motion passes 4-0-1. If I counted correctly. Any additional items of new business? Okay, may I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a
Second.
second? Motion by Foe, seconded by Smith. This motion is not debated or discussed. I'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Foe,
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua,
Aye.
Councilmember Siddiq,
Aye.
and I abstain. The motion passes 401. We are adjourned at 10:01 p.m. Enjoy the game. Good night.
Night, everyone.
Night.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.